Hey guys, it's Randy Kennard with Saturday Station Farm. So my buddy Jay just sent me an article, and he's asking my thoughts on it. And it's from Time. Time magazine. And it's titled One State's Solution to Food Waste in Schools? Question mark. Pigs. With no exclamation. So anyway, so the article just goes on really to say that Maine has now, let me see if I can, maybe I'll actually be able to look this up, has a law saying schools can now give away food scraps to pig farmers that's now actually on the books. So now you can legally go and go to schools and get all that food waste and use it for your pigs. And on the surface, it seems really, and the surface sounds really good. I get a lot of folks that will hit me up because they'll hear of a deal someplace or some spent food someplace and want to give it to the animals. I've got some issues with it, and there's a bunch of little problems I find with it. On the surface, it looks like a great deal. You're like, oh, all this free resource. You know, this it's energy. You know, it's calories. It's inputs that I'm bringing onto the farm that aren't costing me grains. But there's a big connotation. You know, this old connotation of feeding refuge. That's not right. Of feeding your old waste to pigs, as though they're a garbage disposal. Actually, in this article, excuse me, in this article it says the National Conference of State Legislatures said it's unclear how many other states have laws like the one in Maine. The rules about feeding refuse to swine vary by jurisdiction. More than half the states allow garbage feeding, Accord said. And that must be the author of this. So that's just it right there. You're yeah, in some ways you're taking someone else's garbage and you're using it to feed the animals. So I'm not, how do I say this? I'm not absolutely opposed to recycling that waste product. 9 times out of 10, it's perfectly good for us to eat, and that's perfectly good enough for the animals to eat as well. But you kind of run into two different issues. I mean, you kind of, so one, you can have pre-consumer waste, you know, and that's all your waste, essentially before humans have touched it, right? So it's when you're doing prep for dinner and you've got all the leftover, I can't even think of a freaking vegetable. You know, you're cutting up peppers and you're taking the seeds out, you get little scraps. If you're peeling potatoes, or if you're, I don't know why you would, because skins are phenomenal on potatoes. But if you're peeling potatoes or carving open a jack-o'-lantern or something, you get a bunch of, we have a customer that brings us apples that have dropped, that have worms in them. He doesn't want to eat them, doesn't really want to sell them. I don't think he's selling them anyway, but if he were to sell them, they're not pretty. He doesn't want to sell them. So the pigs love them. They don't care. There's nothing wrong with that. It's all kind of pre-consumer stuff. We do get a small amount of stuff from our local pizzeria. So when they're doing all their prep every week, you know, they're prepping all their food, all their veggies for the week. So they have make all their tomato sauces and their all their veggies. They do a bunch of salads. So there's always like parts of lettuce they chop up, and there's always like the ends on the end of the lettuce, like that little hub there, which is fibrous and worthless pretty much. That's all pre-consumer waste, and that I don't really have a problem with. Then you have post-consumer waste, which is all the stuff that somebody's been eating it for lunch, and all the little kids at school are eating their chicken nuggets, and they decide, you know what, I don't really want this chicken nugget, I'm just going to throw it away. And you also have all that half-eaten stuff. It's been half-cooked and half-eaten. That I kind of shy away from. I don't know that there is a chance of any kind of pathogens being transferred from humans to pigs. But just something about that's unsettling because you have so much saliva and grubby little paws from little kids or even adults. If this come from like a university or a college or an institution of any sort, people at restaurants. You have all that potential, and just something about that doesn't sit too well with me. So you have those two different kinds of feedstuffs, and somebody might look at it and say, oh, okay, no big deal. We'll do whatever we want with it. Man, I have like 30 things I want to say about this. So just because they have that law in the books now, one of the things about getting feedstuffs in the Maine law is that the farmer still has to cook this product to make sure it's safe. And we've noticed that too, because sometimes with pizzeria, they'll have like little tubs where they've been cutting up chicken. So we have just this raw chicken. You don't want to feed that to the pigs. Who knows, maybe it's been sitting for a day or two. It's pretty old. Given the choice, they would probably eat it. 9 times out of 10, they'd probably be fine, right? But there's that one chance where you have something run through your herd, and then you're going to run into problems. And, if you're a homesteader and you've got like 2 pigs, 3 pigs, and you're capitalizing on a couple 5-gallon buckets of stuff here and there. We used to go and get a lot of milk, a lot from the dairies, and that was great. I mean, it can be worthwhile on a super small scale. On a much larger scale, your potential for risk to your herd goes up, and plus, you have to have enough volume to really make it worthwhile. If we get we really only get our stuff from the local pizzeria and in the local winery. They get some spent brewery grains once in a while, like once a month we'll get a couple totes, and it's really a treat. It's really a benefit. Just supplementing their baseline ration of grains that they get, and then whatever they can forage. It's kind of like when they're going out foraging, they're getting a big salad. They're just getting a little bit of exotic treats here and there. We have a birthday, and there's a little bit of cake left over. There'd be cake left over. That's what they're. It's a treat. That's all it is. On a small scale, and you're pinching pennies and you're being cheap. You're trying to raise a pig up for as cheaply as possible so that you can put in the freezer and save yourself some money and then have some decent quality pork. You can spend all your time driving around, but the transportation of all this product eats up your time, right? Eats up your time and your money. You're spending gas and your wear and tear on your vehicle to have to get these things. And let's say that I theoretically start working with our local school, Smith School. They have not approached me. I'm not approaching them at all. They said, hey, Randy, we get a whole bunch of 100 pounds of food a day. First of all, I'd be wondering what it was, post-consumer, pre-consumer or post-consumer food. What is it that I'm dealing with? If I have to go and cook it afterwards, I've got to factor in the time that I'm not on the farm working, the time to go get it, my expenses I'm going to incur to get it, and then how I'm going to handle it afterwards. How I'm going to cook it. I'm going to have like a 50-gallon barrel set up on a turkey fryer, and then it's going to be hot. Do I have to wait for it to cool down? So do I have to monitor it this whole time? Do I have certain temperatures? Boiling it, and we got food cooked into the barrel. Like, there's so many kind of factors that go into that. They're really a hassle. And they start to cut into the bottom line, and what appears to be free food ends up just being a drain on my resources in a lot of ways. On the surface, it sounds really good. Like, yeah, pigs are going to get a bunch of food, and they're going to cut down on my feed bill. And it may directly cut down on that feed bill where I'm not paying my grain supplier, to get the grain that it's stored, then I'm just dishing it out as I need to. But it's those unintended costs that are going to rise. They have to be accounted for 100% if you're going to be a profitable business and continue to go forward. So I like the sounds of it on the surface, but it just raises too many questions for me to really want to pursue. Honestly, I think the best use for all that food waste would actually be to compost it. And honestly, that's 99% of what we get from the pizzeria, our local winery, and recently we've started getting some stuff from the Dry Dock restaurant, some leftover pancakes and a couple buckets a week. And honestly, 99% of all that, we compost it all. We put in a big landfill. We get wood chips from our local tree surgeon, and we just compost the snot out of it. It really, the value is much more doing like a lasagna layer of, geez, look at the freaking camera there. A layer of nitrogenous plant matter, could be animal matter. You know, we get some pizzeria, they get bits of chicken in there. And maybe they might have some sausage in it, so pork. So I'm kind of against feeding the same species to the same species. I don't want to feed chickens to chickens and pigs to pigs, especially not knowing where they're coming from. But the same species, I don't want to feed them. Cross species doesn't bother me so much, but it depends on where they've come from. And since you can't really verify that, and I'm not going to sit through a bucket. I get 20 pigs to feed, and I have a 5-gallon bucket. They're all going to get like 2 scraps of lettuce and like a little chunk of something. I'm not picking all that stuff out of there. Just the assault on my time, it's not worth it. The reward that they're going to get is not worth it. So it'll all go into the compost pile. We can have the wood chips. It breaks down, and eventually we get this phenomenal black earth. I can go sell that. I can sell compost if I want to. But really, that for me, it's just resources coming onto the farm. I have inputs coming onto the farm that I can then go use to fertilize our apple trees. Eventually, I'll have a nice big pumpkin patch. Our grapes, our blueberries. We're going to add fertility to our soil, which downrange, I'm building up my wealth in my soil, which is going to give me dividends in the future in the form of foods that, apple trees, if they're healthy and they're productive, will actually go and actually feed the pigs, and then they can have those. And it's more of a long-term strategy of building wealth that I follow. Now, occasionally, like, we can tell like this whole bucket's just nothing but veggies, 100%. Yeah. The grains, the spent grains. One of the problems you get into with spent grains is that within like a day or two, if you can't keep them crazy cold, they will start to mold, and they can produce toxins that are unpalatable and can make the pig sick. I don't care if we get 200 pounds, 300 pounds, 400 pounds, doesn't even matter. I dump it all, free choice, and you can watch them over the 24 hours. They're on it super hard. Within the next 48 hours, they're dropping off, and then by 72 hours, they don't want even to touch it whatsoever. But for that first little push, they'll come in there, they'll check it out. Lots of protein, lots of fiber. Mostly, I'd probably say 80% of it, I don't know, it's a huge number, is just organic matter. It's really going into my soil. We keep a lot of wood chips down where the pigs are at, as a big, deep bedding layer. Big, huge area. That way, we're constantly building soil all the time. All right. And the flip side of that too is once you start to bring in all these other feed stuffs, you start to get unbalanced. You can have an unbalanced ratio in your amino acids and your nutrition that they're getting. You can't really monitor it when you're just getting a bunch of random stuff all the time. So as a treat, it doesn't really bother me too much, especially when you have a lot of animals and you have a limited supply. You kind of dole that out as you can. But to monitor how much they're getting, you could actually be feeding them one feed stuff all the time. And if it's not a complete balanced nutrition, they're essentially malnourished. They're eating one thing all the time and could be skewed one way, and you could actually have better performance by having something that's verifiable. Now you could go ahead and test all the food all the time, but when you're getting like random scraps, and I've seen a lot of school menus, it's carb heavy, super carb, chicken nuggets, pizza, peanut butter and jelly, French bread pizza. They eat a lot of pizza. It's super carb heavy. There's lots of fruits and veggies in there too. It's super, super, super carb heavy. Following that USDA pyramid, obviously. So if I were feeding just that, now I run into the issue of the pigs putting on too much fat. Now when they're little guys, they're going like gangbusters. Their metabolism's so high that they can consume a lot of calories and they're not going to store a lot of fat. They're going to put on muscle, but they're going to hit that 120, 150 pound range where the metabolism is going to slow down, and then they're not going to pack on muscle as much, and their ratio of fat production is going to rise. And I like being able to measure out what they've got. I don't mind going free choice, with regular grains when they're young, but once they get that a little bit higher weight class and age, I want to be able to limit it and monitor it and watch what they're doing so that we're not just creating fat pigs, because fat marbling is good, some back fat is good, but customers don't need 3 inches of back fat. They're only using so much lard, right? So that's probably it. I like the idea of it, but that the distribution going back and forth of me having to go pick up feed stuff and then bring it back here and the handling, even to compost it, I would be excited for that product for this. And for the school, I'm sure it's good. It keeps, they're not spending money on their dumpster rentals, waste disposal. It's a benefit to them. It stays in the community. But honestly, I think the schools would almost be better off having an on-school composting program where they could. Our town at the dump has this massive mountain of wood chips that are free to the residents of Winterport. I don't see why what they could potentially do is just have a designated spot in town, maybe in the corner of one of the fields, soccer fields, or where nobody really ever goes to. There's a big old grass area you just have to mow and maintain, and you're really just spending money to keep it maintained. Have an area where you, the tree folks in the area can dump all their wood chips off, and then you take all this food every day from the school, and you compost it, and then you have all this compost breaking down that you could then maybe plant a school orchard. And every single academic principle that could radiate off of that, biology and chemistry and mathematics and science, through the whole step, all the way from composting to bugs to soil to water tables to growing things, having a little community orchard. I mean, you keep all those resources, instead of shipping all those resources away, it's really just you look at waste as a packet of energy. Instead of just sending that away, you just keep it in the town, right? Whether that's building social capital, actually just a source of food. The money you would spend throwing it all away, you just divert that into the maintenance crew that's already there anyway. You just divert to a different spot. I don't see that there'd be a big net difference. I think there's a lot of ways that could just be used more productively and more I don't know what the word would be, but I think there's more benefit to utilizing this one waste product in a more beneficial way than diverting it to animals. In some situations, that could really work. I think if it could be insured, it was 100% just vegetable matter, maybe I'd be more inclined to it. But then there's always, you don't get a lot of calories from veggies. It sounds really good. And it's kind of interesting that I didn't know that was even a law that you couldn't do that. So it's kind of interesting that their law was passed and now you can do it. That alone seems a little ridiculous that they had to make that a law to allow the usage of that waste. So it'd be interesting to see what there is for rules for on-farm compost. I'm pretty sure, I know Smith School right here in Winterport has like 5 apple trees, like a little garden, in a small garden the kids could use. It could really just be a stepping stone for every other academic discipline they want to study. It's like a living lab. What the hell? Newburgh, I did a talk there to a bunch of the pre-K kids. They've got a huge living garden there. The kids love the outdoors. Hell, half the adults do too. To get outside and just play with animals, play in the soil, like you're not sitting at a desk anymore. You're outside doing stuff, hands on. Like I'll be outside and I'll think of it. I don't know. The overall, I think the overall net benefit is greater through on-school composting of the food waste for long-term wealth, rather than just like the short-term, hey, we need to get rid of it. The pig farmer can take it. Because even the benefit to the pig farmer, I don't know. I just don't think it's all it's cracked up to be. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Guess what I'm saying? So anyway, if someone out there, if one of you guys is out there currently collecting food waste and going through that whole process of cooking it down, handling it, storing it, distributing it to your animals, and what their performance is like, I'd be interested to hear, because this is really, Jay just sent this to me last night, and I was super tired. I was like, I'll check it out in the morning and respond and give you some thoughts. So I'm sure if I had a little bit more longer to think on this, I could come up with something a little more articulate. So that's it, guys. If you have any questions, or let me know your thoughts, make sure you subscribe to this for any other videos coming up. I'm going to try to start doing more of these more frequently. All right, thanks a lot. Hope that answers your question, Jay. See ya.